The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Here we go, the Broadcasters Podcast, and you know what? I never thought I would do this in all my years of podcasting, but I've been doing this show for the last, 3 years? What is it, 2018 I started, and now I really realized, going into 213 episodes, and normally I record this on Thursday night, and it just blanked. I did not do it on Thursday night as planned, so now I'm recording on Friday morning, because I was like, okay, the show's prepped, it's ready, and I just didn't even think about it. But I got the show ready to go tonight. I already had it ready, or this morning as I record. So we're good. I don't know why I did that, but anyways, sports on television. We got the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. I'm not going to talk about commercials or anything like that, but I want to talk about the fascination of sports on television, how well it's done so far in just this digital disruption that I talk about all the time, and how sports is an unstoppable force, impenetrable. It's like, it doesn't matter what there is. Sports continues to increase to be successful. It continues to bring audiences, and there's a lot of reasons why. Number one, there might be some politics that have been trying to get injected into sports, but for the most part, it gets put aside because the level of competition, the performance, and the athletes that we have now today more than ever is just incredible. When you think about the fact of the popularity of sports bars all around the country, all around the world, and you go back a while ago, decades ago, you could think about bars would have maybe a game on or things like that. But when you have the full sports bar experience and you have multiple franchises of different restaurants that are, large chains that are catered to the sports lifestyle and to watching the merchandise, and you would think that while everything else that happens when it comes to scripted content, when it comes to reality shows, when it comes to music, when it comes to movies, they've all had to adapt to this digital disruption, going to streaming, and where people might not be watching movies on cable or network, for whatever reason, people are still holding on to their TVs to watch on rabbit ears or watch on cable sports. The Super Bowl, without a shadow of a doubt, continues to be the most watched show every year around the world. You're talking about 100 million viewers in the U.S. plus, and then you're talking about, about 1 billion viewers around the world, and that's just football. And then you look at basketball and baseball, and they kind of go in the same sense. And one of the things that ESPN did to try to go ahead and lure the newer viewers, which is what their issue is now, is what can they do to draw newer viewers? And this is where you're seeing a lot of changes in the way the games are filmed, where, especially with football, you're looking at it with the different aspect ratio. They're showing the blur background in some cases when they're on the field after a touchdown or after something happens on the field. You see that. So it has that game Madden NFL type of look. That's what they're going for as well. So you're seeing, they've had the sky cam that goes across the field, and then you have, various different views, the highlights, the replays. There's just so much there. And we have other football leagues trying to go and continue to play in the same field in the offseason, the NFL, with the USFL, the XFL coming back next year, wanting to go and try different ideas and changing the way the game is to even make it more exciting and interesting. Because some people think the NFL isn't that interesting sometimes, and then not to mention college football, with the tradition, with the level of excellence that's there. You had 25 million people watching the national championship game. And with ESPN, they've tried to do the thing where, we're going to try different formats to go ahead and let you watch the entire experience of the national championship game. So let's go and do 5 or 6 different versions of the game with radio calls while you're watching the game, with coaches watching the game, with players watching the game. with the NFL, that was one of the ideas that ESPN did, where, okay, we want to do the same multicast, the supercast of a football game. So this year they decided to go with Eli and Peyton Manning. To me, Peyton and Eli Manning should be the other way around. But either which way, that idea is spawning more ideas. And Variety.com actually put the story out about how they did create putting things together for Monday Night Football to make it popular, which worked because Monday Night Football ratings had been sliding a bit. And in some cases, ESPN and ABC needed something to go and really give a jolt to Monday Night Football because now, in some cases, ABC will take a game from ESPN and simulcast it because ABC doesn't have anything else. So why not? So the thing that ESPN did with their Monday Night Football telecast this past season was they put Peyton and Eli together, and they basically call it where it's a low-tech broadcast. These guys are watching the game together, and they'll bring on occasional guests, during every quarter of the game, but they're just talking about the game. And it's a casual sit-back kind of feel to it. And it's not like you're trying to go and be anchors like on First Take or some other thing. They're just doing the show. And Variety.com even talks about how it feels like it's a cross between hanging out in a sports bar and a glorified Zoom session. And that's what it is. So they did 10 Monday night games during the 2021 NFL season. Live banter, crosstalk along the same feed. And fans who wanted the regular play-by-play game coverage, well, they changed the crew that did Monday Night Football this past year. Steve Levy, Brian Greasy, Louis Riddick. And I'll tell you, I watched all the Monday Night Football games while I was watching wrestling. I would just have both on. And I really like what Monday Night Football did because, the year before, Booker McFarland out on this little side bench thing, and then, what they were doing there after they lost Mike Tirico and John Gruden wasn't the same. Like, it wasn't a good mix right there. But this new crew was good. But then if you wanted us to watch the game and you wanted to just, they said, you want to hear two Super Bowl MVP quarterbacks chop it up with the occasional athlete or celebrity guest? You watch the Manning cast. The Manning cast. They even now call it. That's really just what it is. Everybody knows it, and everybody recognizes it more than ever. So ESPN now, this past week, they said along with Disney, their corporate parent, they're going to do an expanded deal with Manning's, creating concepts similar to the Manning cast for UFC, college football, golf broadcasts under Peyton Manning's Omaha Productions. And media companies see the format as one of the creative steps that networks and streamers must take to squeeze profits out of increasingly sky-high sports rights. Because remember, the live sports component, there's a lot of competition for it because the franchises, because they know they can put all these networks over what are the? Why is you can always put them over the guillotine and say, "Hey, you got to pay us. You have to pay us billions of dollars," and they do. The NFL gets billions upon billions of dollars in media rights, which gets spread out to the rest of the franchises and the teams in the league, and they do that. The leagues, they've hit upon a new way to get younger fans to watch games, and media executives across the industry are scrambling to duplicate ESPN's feat, and not just in sports. Any big event, they're saying, could be done like this. So you could see maybe even American Idol or the Oscars have the same dynamics on these programs. So they're thinking that what they're doing in sports could translate over into other programming to create that live event experience that people will sit and watch. Because that's the one thing you have in network and television and cable that will get people to watch programming. Because consistently, any live sports, for the most part, professional end, is going to get an audience. And you kind of know which one's going to be getting what. But baseball will get significantly, 3 to 5 million viewers. NBA is much more than that. And any NFL game is going to get, at least 10 to 20 million viewers. And especially when the games get more intense and the stakes are getting higher, you got the AFC and NFC championship games in football that also get, 40 to 50 million viewers? It gets crazy. But that's what you're getting. And they make sure the programming is in prime time to be watched. World Series, NBA playoff, NBA Finals, all of that. Now, For the Monday Night Football audience, the Mannings captured 13% of the total audience. So the idea is there's some real engagement, and if you could break 10% of the audience to break to the Manning cast, it's valuable to cable and satellite companies to distribute ESPN and the marketers who want to advertise on it. ESPN researchers are continuing to analyze the season's audience data, but they think the new formats serve as an audience expansion tool without question. One person says, for us in the leagues who are in the business of growing more fans. So TV viewership is under pressure. Now they're talking about television, they're conventional, not streaming, but either which way. Matthew Kramer, co-head of sports broadcasting at CAA, says the future of watching sports will be in some way, shape, or form, including a megacast model. And the networks are realizing a core fan may certainly want to watch the game, but this gives the network an opportunity to bring in a different kind of fan who's interested in a different kind of experience. Right. So if you can't follow the game so much, but then you also want to follow the banter and then just casually watch the game, then there you go. Like if you're not worried about the X's and O's so specifically, that's when you watch one of these other shows that kind of, just gives you some entertainment along with the sports coverage. Now, when they talk about Peyton and Eli, when they did the NFL games, this is also going 3 hours plus, making sure they got the banner going so they could just keep going like this. So they don't talk over each other. They barely acknowledge when the show must stop for commercials, and guests like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson get to talk about their love of football, tequila investments, and upcoming movie projects. And there's no slight pressure to dig deeper. And when the Mannings signed off after a wild card game not too long ago, they did so without the faintest whiff of TV hosting skills. Bye, yelled Peyton Manning, and neither told viewers to stay tuned to watch Scott Van Pelt on SportsCenter. So right, so they're doing it casual. It's informal. And because no one is on the Mannings case to sound like polished sports analysts, they want casual. They want it chill. It's like something how you see on social media when you're seeing certain content creators. It's a casual format. And I can agree with that. Now, the other thing, too, is that they talk about how when you're watching NFL games all weekend on Sundays, then you got the next day to watch Monday Night Football, but then you've already watched Thursday Night Football as well. You get a little different flavor, and that's what the Mannings give, drumming up more people that have an interest to watch a Monday night game who probably wouldn't watch otherwise. So it is kind of like almost like a little bit like a late night talk show format to it, or it's just, again, a casual Zoom call with celebrities across the board. It feels like we're peering into something that we shouldn't be watching. It's like an uninhibited view of this great little conversation. We're just eavesdropping. It really is that. Which for me is one of the formats I always did with podcasting. We've always talked about, we want to create that. And now that the NFL has done so well with this, other sports leagues are trying to do the same thing. So there's the word now that Major League Baseball is in talks to renew its rights deals with ESPN and Turner Sports. They're looking to create new ways to show the games, and it's front and center for everybody. So they're trying to figure it out. I mean, baseball would be interesting how they could do that, because 3-hour games, there's so much lag time in between, and the kind of banter that baseball gives, even before I lost interest in baseball, because I didn't like the fact that, the fact that we're going to have another possible lockout in baseball, to where they lost the World Series about 25 years back, really pissed me off. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not watching this league if they're going to do that. Like, these are greedy players and greedy owners, and they can't come together for the good of the fans to play a World Series game. So, I'm not watching. I don't want it. It was upsetting to me. So they did that, and I was like, all right, I'm out of that. Enough. Now, networks have been experimenting with new spins on traditional sports for telecasts for a while. KidCast on ESPN, where teens are talking about the action of the Little League World Series. We know that Nickelodeon have been doing some stuff with the NFL, experimental, to try to create that. Major League Baseball Network, MLB, last year employed former New York Yankees pitcher CC Sabathia to lead a clubhouse edition that had him trade anecdotes about the game with former players, StatCast with on-air graphics for fans who want to nerd out on things like pitches per plate appearance, NBC Sports has offered hot pass coverage of NASCAR races, allowing viewers to see things from the perspective of several top drivers. There was a Marvel cast of an NBA game on ESPN2, turning a contest between the Golden State Warriors and the New Orleans Pelicans into a battle that featured a different scoring system and superhero avatars. I just mentioned Nickelodeon, where they offered a broadcast of a CBS Sports feed for a wild card game in the NFL for kids. And they had a lot of different things they tried to do with that. But that's what they're trying to do. ESPN's trying to put firepower behind the concept to turn it from a clever one-off to a format sustainable for fans that can expect some semi-regularity. And the Mannings are under contract with ESPN for 2 more years, so they think they could try to do something with an alternate telecast. And that's what they're going to try. And the biggest reason why they're doing it, easy to produce. So Eli Manning, who's retired from the Giants, holds fort in his home in New Jersey, and producers can sometimes see his kids on the set before the game starts. Peyton Manning is typically sitting in a makeshift studio built in a friend's house, private warehouse facility in Denver, and the brothers can travel if they need to, knowing they can host a game no matter where they might go. Peyton even went to the ESPN studios to cover for one game. Now, first of all, ESPN almost decided to have a host work with the duo because they do that with all their other shows. But after off-camera tryouts, producers said they didn't need it. Peyton Manning is said to be particularly involved with the process, casual on screen, but hands-on with details behind it. And the brothers haven't even taken an interest in working with ESPN to book guests. So they brought on Jon Stewart, David Letterman, Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner, and former U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. So they're just going out there. And they'll take a lot of football types and they'll bring in other people, but really it's amazing. So ESPN is the one they're trying to do because, first of all, they're losing subscribers by the boatload. So they're trying to go ahead and stop the erosion and that continued exodus off of their format, because it doesn't mean ESPN is trying to go and keep people watching their programming, except for the fact that if they're only going to watch for live sports and they're going to abandon altogether, then they don't need to worry about it. And that's where they're coming from. Plus, you're trying to create a format that you can watch from home. Because if you're watching at a sports bar, you're not going to listen to the commentary. And some people don't want to listen to commentary. They just kind of mute it out. They just kind of blank it out when they're watching the game. But this right here is a different feel to it. And maybe you just want to watch a game where you're not around other people. You don't want to have that feeling of that virtual, fans like you watching the game together and just kind of just shooting the crap. And that's what they're doing here. It makes sense. Can they do it across the board? That's the idea. Now, one thing that people are saying that they should be mindful of is that they could be doing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire syndrome, where you try to go and run this format as much as possible. But now they're going to be doing stuff like this. ESPN wants to run a separate broadcast of Sunday Night Baseball, which is led right now by Alex Rodriguez and Michael Kay. The pair is already called K-Rod as a nickname. ESPN's in discussions with the NBA about creating a sort of team cast, and it would give viewers hours of behind-the-scenes coverage of one of the teams in the league's playoffs before it and around. So they're thinking also what could happen down the line is that the Super Bowl could get, in the future, a megacast format. And in 2026, ABC, along with ESPN, will have the Super Bowl game for themselves, and it'll be done across many broadcasts. So they think they'll do certain unique camera views, certain set of celebrities. And there's even more ideas of creating different programming for sports as well. They also talk about in the article. There's a lot more to it, but I'm going to leave it all there. I want to go into where the future TV sports is going to be, because the score.com actually talked about it, and they put some interesting ideas out in front. And this is some of the predictions that are going to be going forward with the future of TV sports. That sports television will not be immune to the digital forces that have rocked the rest of the media and entertainment worlds. Cord-cutting and improved streaming options are already having an impact on regular TV. Live sports may be the last anchor, keeping households tied to cable and satellite plans, but that ground is shifting quickly. So the talked to somebody that was watching a lot of sports and mentioned that, one of the people they profiled in this article, they said that he was able to keep watching what he loved most from 2019 and most of 2020. And then late 2019, he saw a streaming bill kept getting bigger. He subscribed to Hulu Live TV for $45 a month, carrying Bally Sports Ohio, the regional sports network for the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Cleveland Guardians games. Hulu then upped their price to $55 in November 2019, then $65 in November 2020. And the big reason for the increase, he knew, was regional sports networks. And ESPN kept increasing their fees to offset the cord cutting they were enduring. As sports channel fees increased and millions of consumers continued to cut cords, and more regional sports networks were dropped by traditional cable providers and live TV streaming alternatives, the streaming services Sling TV and Dish Network, or the streaming side of Dish Network, they couldn't reach a deal with Sinclair Broadcasting to carry all their sports networks, the Bally Sports Networks you see today. In September 2020, YouTube failed to reach an agreement with Sinclair, and then a month later, Hulu Live also dropped all the Sinclair regional sports networks. It's very difficult still, because of the base established structure, for sports to go ahead and transition completely over to streaming, because the rights of the leagues have not been determined yet. They have to be all considered. And honestly, you still need network TV and cable to be able to take in the amount of audience, the amount of viewers watching. Because if you do this, it's going to kind of blow away the servers of what they're going to be able to do. I mean, for the level of what they're already doing now. They haven't gotten it set to where you can watch every sport on streaming, very successfully. They've gotten a lot of sports up there. They're getting the way up there, but you're not going to get a point yet where these streaming services, like there are streaming services right now for the individual sports leagues, but you're talking about trying to put them on the big streaming bundles as opposed to these side premium projects. The sports that you want to have on, say, a Peacock or an Amazon or whatever, it's not even close to the level that you're going to get on network TV and cable. You still have to go to network TV and cable to get all that programming. And so this particular person they talked about, he didn't have access to the local MLB, Major League Baseball, and NBA games. And he just felt like, well, I'm going to have to go back to traditional cable. So he had to watch the telecast without a cable or satellite TV package through AT&T TV, but it was $86 a month, then went up to $97 a month in May. And then also has increased again to $100 in January. So even streaming now through these directed cable services, doing their own streaming, they keep putting their prices up because the rights of the sports cable networks and how much they charge per subscriber keeps going up. So that, of course, the price goes back and gets, tumbled over to you. That's how they're going to do it. Now, in terms of where they're going, Dan Berlin, a professor at Ryerson University's RTA School of Media, he asked themselves, one simple question: who's Blockbuster, who's Netflix? 2004, there were more than 9,000 Blockbuster locations in North America. And 2007, Netflix pivoted from mail-order DVD to launch a game-changing subscription video on-demand service. We know what happened with those. So the idea is, what's the winning model? Berlin says the million-dollar question is, how can they change a model that was their bread and butter? The biggest changes in people aren't flipping their channels anymore. Certainly the Generation Zers are not. We pick what we want to watch. What will be the winning model? Will it be better for leagues to keep their streaming rights and launch their own Netflix-like direct-to-consumer products, or do they benefit from finding third-party distributors? Will tech giants, all sitting on billions of dollars of cash reserves, disrupt traditional TV operators, and can regional sports networks and their cable partners be nimble enough to adapt? And will there be a marketplace where fans and viewers can decide the winners and losers with their money? Or will tech giants swoop in and create monopolies? And if the regional bundle comes undone, will teams within the same city find themselves competing against each other on separate services? There's a lot more to that. The other thing they talk about, too, is that the National Football League doesn't have the kind of problem where there are so many games and so many leagues to kind of cover that there's not enough to going, because you're just playing in the NFL once a week and you're playing 16 games, more or less? And that's it. But the NBA, Major League Baseball, and NHL have all their games in local markets, and they're trying to find a direct-to-consumer offering that collects local rights and bypasses cable as the way to cord cut for the leagues to their regional sports network partners. Sinclair's trying to go and beat to the jump by putting out their own over-the-top service, reportedly priced around $23 a month, and they even Sinclair Broadcasting took on an extra $600 million of debt to fund the plans. And that will be another streaming app to the universe that's already talked about the biggest players. A YouGov survey from last May found out 9% of Americans say they're willing to pay $60 or more in total for streaming services, because that's what they want to pay for cable. But they're having to pay twice as much for cable for the level of content they get, and some of it they're not even watching. Sinclair expects their new over-the-top service to have almost 1 million subscribers by the end of 2022 and 4.4 million subscribers by 2027, 5 years from now. That's the idea for that, if they can make it happen. And if it works, it'll be good for them. But others are trying to create their own direct-to-consumer product. English Premier League has done it. And the other problem is that, again, it's the rights fees. Getting the local rights in the U.S., it's a problem for any league with ambitions to launch a centralized direct-to-consumer product. Sinclair, with the strangle they have right now on all these different, 22 regional sports networks, to kind of open up streaming altogether, a Bally Sports model, that would have to go bankrupt and shut down to open the rights to the market again. And then to buy back the rights as assets are liquidated. Now, people are also asking, is there another way, a new type of third-party distribution partner that can better connect the consumer in live sports and centralize distribution? Berlin says, quote, I believe teams will continue to think conventionally with third-party media companies as partners for a couple of reasons. Number one, it mitigates the risk in terms of their ability to build a subscription base, and I also think there is going to be a new phenomenon occurring where these rights to live sports are so valuable, it will create a new age of bidding wars. Then the question is, will tech giants dominate? Given how much content is there for guys to have, they'll pay to the nose for it. That's the thing for sports. Some people will pay the money, because remember, when you have sports, in some cases for boxing or for UFC, people have been accustomed to pay $50 to $60 for one event. That's how important it is to them. Amazon is one of the few that have really broken across when it comes to streaming. NFL's Thursday Night Football, they're going to be paying now $1 billion a year for exclusive rights to NFL Thursday night games. Amazon first bought streaming rights to the package in 2017, with other networks producing the broadcast. But next year, Amazon will be the only place to watch the games on Thursday nights. And it's a very high commodity, $1 billion a year to do that. Thank goodness I have Amazon. They go into so much more in this, but it's amazing, and you just have to figure out what they can do. But again, this is where you need all the sports leagues, all these local rights fees to be kind of taken out of the hands of these smaller, traditional, established sports networks, and make it where the streamers could then say, okay, I want it in one blanket thing. Here's $1 billion, whatever it is, and make it happen. Now, one of the things I could tell you is they're talking about, or NFL, okay, the NBA is the next sport to have their national rights come up in 2024, 2025, and something Apple or Amazon could take a shot at securing the rights. And then Apple is spending $7 million a year in content already alone. They think they're sitting on $200 billion in cash. And Apple could be a serious bidder for a number of rights packages, including the NFL's heralded Sunday ticket package. Netflix isn't involved in sports because most of its future growth is expected to occur internationally. But they have sports documentaries, but that's about it. Then there's ESPN. They can go on and ask $10 to $15 to be part of the cable subscription package. But if you look at ESPN Plus, you can't charge $15. They're charging $7 a month. And they got 75 million subscribers. When it comes to Disney, sports is not going away. According to Bob Iger, a former CEO of Disney, he says live sports consumption on what I call a television experience, even though the television is connected very differently than the traditional TV was, because of how exciting it is, how unpredictable it is, being in that space is still valuable, but you have to go where the consumer is going. The question is what the new CEO will do with it. If I would have remained, I would have pushed it really hard. Part of the appeal to big tech is how live sports can help their other businesses. And it can, but it's a lot of money to get into it. They have to figure that out. There's so much more to get into this that I'm not even going to jump into, but I think it's fascinating, the whole story. There's more I could talk about this week, but I'm going to hold it and not put any more out there. I have more stories I could bring up, but I'm going to keep it short this week, short and sweet. Because I still have to talk about the fact that Reddit rolled out a new version of Reddit Talk. I'll talk about that. So Reddit's getting into the game where they're doing like Facebook rooms and Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse. Everybody's to kind of do this whole thing. They want to keep trying to go. And there's some other things. Entertainment Weekly, InStyle Magazine, they're no longer doing print editions. So if you go to the supermarket checkout lines, you're not going to see them up there anymore. It's done. Digital disruption, baby. That's what it is. And there is more. So I'll take to that. There's some stuff on radio, but I'm going to hold off to that. And I'm going to do a radio edition of the Broadcasters Podcast down the line. I'm just waiting for the right time to do it. But Fred Jacobs has written some good articles, and I'm going to bring those up down the line, but I won't do it right away. I'll hold off on those for right now. But anyway, enjoy the Super Bowl this weekend. Enjoy the commercials and all that good stuff. Come back for another Broadcasters Podcast next week. And until then, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.